Hello, and welcome to another look with Christian King. It is Sunday morning, February 10th, I believe, and we've got a lot to talk about. UFC 234 took place last night. I think in my previous show, I may have been a little bit too negative about I should have at least mentioned the fact that there were a lot of evenly matched fights that were sure to be fun, but this was not a pay-per-view card to begin with. And then at the 11th hour, Robert Whittaker discovered that his bowel was flipped around and poking out through a hole in his stomach along with part of his intestine and had to undergo emergency surgery. So we were left with one fight that was already not worthy of being a main event and nothing to support it. So that got really interesting, and that's what I'm going to talk about before I get into this card. Is the fact that the UFC, I understand they have their schedule and their budgets, but the UFC really needs to look out for fans. I can't begin to tell you how I wasn't at all surprised, but how disappointed I was when I looked and I saw that this was going to remain a full price pay-per-view. No marked down price. Certainly not going to make it free all of a sudden. And I made the decision to not purchase it. So I did not watch the fights, the pay-per-view live as intended. Of course, I have seen the fights. I watched them online. And normally I would feel somewhat bad admitting that because I never do that. But the UFC does not deserve $70 for that fight card. And as far as I know, there were no fighters. After the removal of Robert Whittaker, there were no fighters on there even getting pay-per-view points. So all of that money was going directly to the UFC's pockets. And I think they need to learn that you can't charge the same price for Conor McGregor versus Khabib Nurmagomedov as you do for Israel Adesanya versus Anderson Silva. Paying $70 for that is not happening. No way. Even if I have a great job. Just to be candid, I have a great job. I work hard. I can afford that. I'm not going to spend the money on that, though. Even if I made 10 times as much money as I currently do, I still wouldn't because it's principle. So yeah, that was a bummer. So definitely was not the fight night I was looking forward to last night. And boy, I'm going to be out of town for UFC 235. What I wouldn't give for these two cards that have been switched. It would have been so great if the weekend that I was going to be out of town on the road and unable to watch, if it had been this falling apart pay-per-view card instead of the awesome one that I'm going to completely miss out on, due to being social and whatnot, despite my desires to be a hermit. So let's go ahead and get into this card now that I confessed to not properly watching it and explained why, and we'll just dive right into it. So the main event I was really excited about. I had picked Robert Whittaker to win the main event by unanimous decision due to the durability of Kelvin Gastelum. That fight didn't happen, as we know. So the main event was Israel Adesanya defeating Anderson Silva by decision. I'm going to give a take on this fight that might not be very popular. A lot of people watched that last night, and they said, man, and even part of me wanted to be like, man, look how good Silva is. Oh, wow, look, Chael Sonnen was right. If Silva doesn't have to worry about being taken down, he's 10 times better. Here's my opinion, and this is not going to be a popular opinion, especially since it's kind of talking bad on both fighters. I think that Adesanya carried Silva a little bit. And I know that would be considered a hot take, and that probably wouldn't be very popular, but my point of view on it is that whenever Adesanya started to actually pressure and box, he was landing on Silva easily. But then he would stop doing that, and he would exchange cool spinning kicks with Anderson that were both, barely missing and going right over each other's heads. And, they were doing all these flashy techniques and having all this fun out there. And in my opinion, if Israel Adesanya had just pushed forward and used his boxing, he could have stopped Anderson Silva, or at least won far more dominantly. I felt like he chose somewhat. Now, part of that choice might have been being in awe of Anderson Silva, in which case he's not so much carrying him as he's just not fighting to his full potential. But in my opinion, when you watch those moments where Adesanya actually put some serious offense together with his hands and how easily he landed on Silva, it just really seems to me like if Adesanya had forced that issue and been looking for the dominant win and the finish, that might have been a path to success with not too much resistance, all things considered. But that's not what happened. They went to a decision. It was fun. Anderson Silva arguably won the second round. He lost the first and the third. It was a good fight. It was not a pay-per-view fight, though. It was a good co-main event, I guess. I would consider it more of a good featured bout on a pay-per-view. But yeah, it was interesting. Good for Anderson. I'm glad he didn't get stopped or anything. I hate when he just lets people hit him, though. And even that moment, Israel stopped. It's like he was hitting him, and Silva was trying to do his whole thing where he's got his hands down, but he doesn't move with the shots as well as he used to, so they're actually landing kind of hard. And Adesanya just kind of didn't continue to do it. I mean, my point is, I feel like if you had told Adesanya, you either finish this guy or you don't get paid, I think that we would have seen a different fight. That's what I'm saying. So, let's move on down to the co-main event that ended up being the original Fight Pass prelim headliner. I can't even say that with a straight face. The lightweight co-main event between Lando Vannata and some guy I've never heard of who they just brought in to give Lando Vannata an easy win. The guy's, he's won half his fights, he's lost half his fights. Lando submitted him in the first round. This guy looks like he's never grappled before in his life. I have no idea what he was doing on the ground. Normally I always try to be respectful to fighters, but there is no way that Marcos Rosa Mariano deserved to be in there come on. His grappling, he looked like a fish out of water. I struggle to have seen grappling that bad on regional scenes, just to be frank. I have no idea how that guy ended up here. Bantamweight, Hani Yahya got defeated by Ricky Simone, and good. I'm sorry to be an unpopular opinion person once again today. I don't like Hani Yahya. I don't know why everybody else likes him so much. Everyone goes on and on about how he's the nicest guy in MMA. I guess, not really. Demian Maia is the nicest guy in MMA just because he's one of many respectful Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioners. He's not anything different than the rest of them. He also just, I don't know, he's got kind of his lack of, he just needs to shave his head. The weird balding pattern that he has going on gives me the creeps, just to be honest. And, maybe I'm biased because I have perfect hair, but, gives me the heebie-jeebies a little bit. And also what I don't like is somebody getting, a couple wins over not very impressive competition and then trying to call for a title shot. And I know that sometimes, I don't know. I feel like some of these fighters where English isn't their first language. Maybe they tend to make some of the more ridiculous call-outs. You do have people like Kevin Lee. Kevin Lee, he's a black guy from Detroit. He speaks perfect English, and he was calling out Khabib when he didn't deserve to fight Khabib. So, who knows? Maybe some guys just overshoot their shot. But, we had the famous Mickey Gall trying to call out Dan Hardy. Like, what the heck are you talking about, kid? So, yeah, Hani Yahya trying to act like he was supposed to, when I win this fight, I'm going to, fight TJ Dillashaw or Dominic Cruz. Like, give me a break, man. You're barely in the top 15, and, you're 26-10, and I don't know. I'm just not a fan of his game. I don't feel like I'm just not a big fan. But, that was a fun fight. Good win by Ricky Simone. I think he's got a lot of upside. Yeah. So before that, at women's flyweight, Montana De La Rosa stopped Nadi Hassim via submission in round 2. This was just a dominating. I actually thought that was in round 1. I must have spaced out for a minute. That was such a dominant fight. I guess I just assumed it was round 1. I guess it was round 2. So good on Nadia for surviving. This was her first loss. She was 5-0. I guess that's why she was here. This is a little bit similar to the Marcos Rosa Mariano thing, where it's like, why is she here again? She had nothing for her opponent. Well, at least she's undefeated instead of being, 6-5 like Marcos was. So at least she was 5-0. So it kind of makes sense how she got there. But good win for Montana De La Rosa, and I'm happy for her that she got the bonus. Just for the record, the bonuses were Israel defeated Anderson. I didn't make any picks other than the top 2 fights. I picked Israel to win. I thought he'd stop him. In my opinion, he didn't try to stop him. But the bonuses were fight of the night was Israel versus Anderson. And then Montana De La Rosa got a performance bonus, and someone else did. I'll remember whenever I get to them. Sorry, I'm sniffling a little bit. It's really cold over by the window here, and the heat makes too much noise from my sensitive microphone. So that was a good win by Montana De La Rosa. We're going to move on to the opener of the pay-per-view card, which was the light heavyweight fight between Jim Crute and Sam Alvey. I saw a little bit of this fight, like some highlights, and didn't even hear any audio, so I guess it was a bad stoppage. Here's the issue. That's on Jimmy Crute. I'm just going to put this really frankly. You got to stay on your opponent when you hurt them. You can't be nice. And Jimmy Crute, in my opinion, what I saw happen, I'm not even going to say in my opinion, this is what happened. This is what I saw. I saw him hurt Sam Alvey, and when he was going to pounce on him, he was like, this guy's really nice, and he's got a family, and, I don't need to give him more brain damage, so once I see that he's not going to be able to defend himself, I'm just going to step away. Well, the problem with that is he stepped away, and then Sam Alvey got up. And Sam Alvey did, he's mad about the stoppage. Well, the fact of the matter is, Sam Alvey, the fight should have been stopped in that first sequence, because Jimmy Crute should have pounced on him, and then there would be no questions. But Jimmy Crute tried to be a nice guy, be a sportsman, and not do any extra damage, and now instead what he has people taking his win away from him, saying that it was a bad stoppage. Sam Alvey's all mad now, so it's kind of a little bit of a crap show. I mean, you got to do your job. You are not the referee. It's not your job to decide when the fight's done, unless it's egregious. A good example I can think of is Ricardo Lamas versus Chad Mendes. Chad Mendes was beating on him so bad that he was able to just lift both his hands in the air and turn around and shrug at the ref, like, do you really want me to hit this guy again? Well, in that case, you can. But when you've knocked someone down once and you haven't even followed up yet, to just assume that you don't need to follow up, that's not a good way to win fights. That's a good way to have an adrenaline dump and end up losing. That's a good way to think you've won, all your adrenaline dumps, and then all of a sudden the guy's back up and you have to fight 2.5 more rounds. So that was not a good move by Jimmy Crute. I also, honestly, just for the sake of clarity, I wish that head kick had landed. He went to throw that head kick. That would have stopped Alvey, because you saw Alvey caught the kick, and then when he took him down, Alvey just kind of fell forward with him and landed on his own head. Alvey was not all the way there. So that was unfortunate for Jimmy Crute. I hate when fighters lose some of their shine, but I'm sorry, I hate to be rude, but that's what you get for not doing your job till the last minute, there is no, when you're fighting, you're on from the moment the bell rings to the moment the bell stops. You can't take any breaks. You can't have lapses. You can't decide that you're going to play referee. You just can't do that. Okay, so before that, hang on, I need a little coffee, and let me find my notes. I've got some notes here somewhere. Okay, so on the prelims, the prelim main event on ESPN was Devante Smith taking on Dong Hyun Ma, formerly known as Maestro Dong Young Kim. Now he's Maestro Dong Young Ma, because there's a much more famous Dong Young Kim who's also a fighter, and he's probably tired of people calling him the other Dong Young Kim. So now he is Dong Young Ma. It really doesn't matter what his name is, because he got blown out of the water very shortly into this fight. Devante Smith shows some serious promise. I like his footwork. We saw patience, which is a new element in his game. Seems to have very powerful, at least counter grappling. So I'd like to see where he goes from here. It's a little too early to say for sure. This was pretty impressive. Knocking out Juliana Rosa was not impressive. That was just what was going to happen in that fight 9 out of 9 times. Before that, we had a featherweight fight. Shane Young defeated Austin Arnett by decision. And what really sealed it was that drop he got in the last 5 seconds of the fight. Last 5 seconds of the fight, they were swinging, and Shane Young dropped Austin Arnett, and that clearly gave him the win, in my opinion. But here's the problem. Austin Arnett did not get enough credit for what he was doing on the judges' scorecards or from the commentators. Austin Arnett won that first round, in my opinion. Maybe not. I mean, I'll have to rewatch it. Okay, now I'm losing confidence because I remember he got hurt at the end. But still, Austin Arnett was doing way better than anyone was giving him credit for. So that bummed me out. I feel like people, he came all the way from Washington State, flew around the world to Australia. In my opinion, the commentators need to give him some credit. They were all about Shane Young. They weren't giving him any props for what a good job he was doing striking off the back foot. Shane Young, he needs to evolve majorly. He just does the same thing over and over and just gets hit a lot. That's not going to work. Think about his teammate Dan Hooker, who fought Edson Barboza. The same thing would happen to Shane Young if he fought Edson Barboza or Jose Aldo or anyone like that. The same thing would happen. So he needs to evolve majorly. I don't know what there's no reason he should have been getting hit that much by Austin Arnett. Did you see Hakeem Dawodu fight Austin Arnett? Come on, man. Shane Young needs to evolve. He needs to step his game up and just needs to stop. I don't know, man. He just seems like he's just completely content to get hit a million times, to just keep coming forward. And that's not a good strategy at featherweight, where guys hit hard and don't get tired. So I'm not sure. He's got a lot of evolving he needs to do. Speaking of much desperately needed evolution, we had a flyweight fight between Kai Kara-France and Roulin Paiva. So we're just going to talk about Kai Kara-France. Paiva looked fine, but I don't know. I feel like he would do okay at bantamweight at least, so that's a good sign for him, whereas Kai Kara-France would do terribly at bantamweight. So maybe Paiva would do good at bantamweight if they end up getting rid of the flyweight. So that's the one thing I'll say about him. I thought this maybe should have been a split decision. Maybe it was. I don't remember. I think it was. But anyways, so Kai Kara-France is either on offense or defense. There is no doing both at the same time, and that's a huge problem. He is either completely shelled up, completely on the defense, or he's completely on the offense. And that is a really, really not good thing to see from a fighter that's already had 26 professional fights. The other thing is, so he struggles to combine those, and then the other thing is he has absolutely zero variation. Zero. Paiva, who is not a striker, was able to start piecing him up in those later rounds. He always dips his head to the right. He always throws the same combinations. He always enters the pocket in the same way. He always exits the pocket in the same way. It's a big problem. Speaking of big problems, the heat just came on. So that's really loud. I need to go pause that. Not pause that. I need to go turn that off. So give me 2 seconds. I'm not going to bother pausing the show. So I will be back in a few seconds. We're back. All right, getting back in the seat over here. That noise should stop in just a second. Okay, there it goes. Awesome. All right. Honestly, there's only one more fight. Nope, there's a few more. Okay, yeah, so. All right, so before that, Kai Kara-France majorly needs to evolve. I'm not even sure if he won that fight, to be honest. And if the UFC axes the flyweight division, he's toast, in my opinion, because he cannot compete at bantamweight. He is very tiny and doesn't even seem to pack enough power to hurt flyweights. So before that, bantamweight, Teruto Ishihara lost to God almighty, this guy's name's hard. We're just going to call him Kong. I had the pronunciation down, and I lost it. So, So anyways, he lost by submission. Teruto Ishihara did. He dropped Kong. Kong came back, hurt him. They brawled, and then he was able to tie him up in a kind of a tie-up along the fence. They got in a scramble. He ended up somehow staying on the back despite having no hooks in, and then Kong was able to get the hooks in, get the choke under the chin, and Teruto Ishihara just decided to go to sleep. He was not tapping. That dude's a warrior, man. He's a tough Japanese kid. What's his name? Kong. He is from South Korea, and it's interesting to think, where would his career be at if he had not had to take the 3 years of mandatory military service that he just recently completed for his country. And you know what? I gotta say, I think that's really a unique thing about South Korea. The mandatory military service, even if you're a professional athlete. I don't know, man. I'm not here to talk about politics, but I tell you what, if a professional, Stephen Curry had the possibility of being, drafted to the military, not possibility, if he knew that geez, talk about how much more that would make you, not that Steph Curry, there's nothing wrong with Steph Curry, he's a great role model citizen, but I'm just saying, imagine that being, you're serving in the military and you're like, oh, there's Steph Curry next to me, like no discrimination. The richest people and the poorest people, everyone does their time. I think that's kind of interesting. Obviously, I don't think that would be a good idea. I'm not suggesting that America should adopt that, but I do find it interesting, and I find it highly respectable. And it gives you I know I just used the word respect like 10 times, but it just gives you a lot of respect for these fighters like him and Chansung Jeong, the Korean zombie, and who's the other kid who's going to be the Korean Superboy, Doo-ho Choi. He's going to be doing his military service soon. Just really, really respectable, neat thing that they all do for their country. Not that they have a choice. Okay, so before that, you get 2 fights on Fight Pass. The first one on Fight Pass was a very boring decision between Wulaji Burin and Jonathan Martinez. Going to skip over that one. So the one to talk about on Fight Pass was the Fight Pass headliner. It was Calvin Potter taking on, his nickname's the Rockstar. He does not look like a rock star to me. He looks like I don't know. I don't really know where that nickname. I'd be curious to know where that nickname came from. I would have given him a nickname related to Harry Potter if I was his coach, because his last name's Potter, and he looks more like Harry Potter than he looks like a rock star. Jalen Turner, the Tarantula, is an intimidating young man. This guy is 6'3", fighting at 155 pounds, and he's not a frail, skinny-looking 6'3" like James Vick's anorexic-looking body. He looks healthy, and he looks strong, and he packs some serious power. I really liked what he had here in this fight. He tracked Potter down, he stayed patient, and he timed a perfect uppercut when Potter lowered his level to look for the takedown, and he hurt him very, very badly. It was a little bit scary for a minute there. Potter went out. Potter got up. Minutes after being knocked out, Potter was trying to put the referee in a Muay Thai clinch. Because he was still so out of it that he thought he was still in the fight and that the referee was his opponent. The referee is wearing a shirt, shoes, long pants, and does not have the same hair or skin color as Jalen Turner. So that's very concerning when you see that. For you to be trying to wrestle a white guy wearing black shoes, black gloves, black pants, and a black shirt, when a minute ago you were fighting a African-American guy who's wearing, I think, like neon green shorts or whatever color he was wearing. My point is, you're seriously hurt if you were confusing Jalen Turner for the referee in that situation. So that was pretty scary to see. Calvin Potter was able to walk out of the cage on his own power, with his teammates standing right next to him, of course, to help support him if he needs it. He was able to wave to the crowd. He said he's okay. Obviously, it could be decades until we know how bad that knockout really affected Mr. Potter. Sorry, I can't resist Mr. Potter. Sorry. Can't resist it. Harry Potter books are a big part of my childhood, so I love that last name. But so anyways, that was a fun fight for Jalen Turner, at least. Probably not very fun for Mr. Potter, but yeah, so that's all we had for this card. We got a big card coming up next Sunday. In fact, I should probably do a preview show for that. So I'll have to figure out when I have time for that. We'll see when we get to it. But yeah, this was ended up being a fun night of action fights. But, there was definitely some memorable moments. But definitely not worth $70. And I'm not sad that I skipped purchasing this one. I think the UFC needs to. I think the UFC needs to consider having tiers of pay-per-views, in my opinion, because like I said earlier, you can't have the same price for Conor McGregor versus Khabib as you do for this fight card. The problem is that the UFC did decide to do that. What they would probably do is they would probably keep them the same price and then just make the Conor ones even more expensive. So maybe I should stop talking before they hear this and start charging $100 for Conor's fights and $70 for everyone else's. All right, that's all I've got for now. We'll figure out a way to get back in here for a preview show for UFC on ESPN, the first one on official ESPN next Sunday. Not sure when I'll get back for that preview show. We'll figure that out as we go. But until then, y'all take care.